All right, so we're just going to be doing a Season 7 tier list. I've played a decent amount of PTS, so I think I have a good amount of knowledge for this. Obviously, I haven't started scrimming or anything like that, so there's not a lot of competitive weight to this yet, but I think I can kind of get a good feel for it either way, and hopefully this will be pretty accurate going into Season 7. I think it will be. They're just going to be going through the viable Soul Lane gods. Maybe I'll throw in some weird odd picks here and there, but if they're really, really odd Soul Lane picks, then they're probably going to be like lower anyway. You know, they're going to be like D, C, B or something, so that's not really too relevant. I'm going to try and stay towards the relevant gods in the Soul Lane. I'm using the Brandon Juice Gaming tier list because none of the other tier lists had the updated gods on them. This one doesn't even have Heimdall. The tier list community is dying down, I guess. Anyway, but yeah, we're just going to do the Season 7 Soul Lane tier list. So I'm just going to go through. Obviously going to skip quite a few of these gods, but we'll start off with Achilles, starting off strong. So Achilles got a bit of a nerf. He's still going to be really strong. He's just a really safe god. He can be really safe, but he can also be really aggressive. He kind of is the jack of all trades, kind of like Wukong, but he's actually really good at doing everything. He's good at surviving. He's good at killing. He's good at killing tanks. He's good at killing carries. He does everything well, and he doesn't really fall off that hard late game because of his executes. So I think because of his nerfs, he's going to drop down a little bit, but I still think he's going to be around S just because of you can't really go wrong with picking him. So moving on, these gods really aren't fireable. Thing is, I'm going to throw Opwash in here. Now, this is a little bit weird. He's a bit of an oddball pick, so what I was talking about before. But the reason I'm going to throw him in here is because he actually got a anti-heal buff to his 1. So when you hit somebody with your 1, it actually anti-heals them, and healing is really important in Soul Lane. So you could see him be picked a little bit more into like matchups where, like even to an Achilles, like Achilles is using his spamming his 2 a lot of the time, and you're gonna be able to get that stun off of on him with your 3. You're gonna get the anti-heal on your 1, and you have anti-heal on your ult. So I think you're gonna see Outposh played a little bit more. Maybe not in solo, but I definitely think that he could be played there in especially if you're comfortable on him and you know the matchup you're playing into. So like in ranked. So I'm actually gonna throw him in B. I think he's probably a bit underrated as a mage in the Soul Lane. Ama. So I'm actually going to throw Ama in S+, and the reason for this is I thought Ama was probably one of the best picks in general in Soul Lane in Season 6 when they buffed her towards the middle of the season. You saw me play her top pick like all the time at the end of the season in SPL. And I think she's even going to get better because Glad Shield's getting nerfed, and Ama's never has been a god that uses Glad Shield. She's always been a lot better with Berserker Shield or just building differently in general. She's never been a Glad Shield god, and even when Glad Shield was as good as it was last season, she was still a top pick. So now that Berserkers might be picked up a little bit more often, she's going to be right where she wants to be. And she did see a nerf in her ult, but her ult still hits like a truck. You're still going to one-shot carries with it. So I still think she's going to be amazing. And in fact, I think she'll probably be S+. She'll probably be the top warrior in Soul Lane next season, without a doubt, really. Moving on. Afro, I'm going to throw down in C. I'm only putting in here because she's traditionally a viable Soul Lane god. She's just, you've always seen her there at some point in the metas. But she doesn't do really at all what you want from a Soul Laner right now. Soul Laners are all about diving right now and killing carries and being really annoying and being obnoxious, and Afro is really not that. It's not really a healing meta, and I don't think you're going to see a healing meta in Season 7 really at all, even though like there's the existence of like CAD Shield. And the reason for this is just because anti-heal is so good right now, and there's so many gods with anti-heal in their kit. Like Odin's going to be a prevalent pick, and he has 100% anti-heal in his ult. Serket isn't going to be as much anymore, so that's a little bit buff to healers, but for the most part, it's still going to be there's so much access to anti-heal and so many ways to shut it down, even just through items. The items are good, so you're not going to see her too often in solo. Moving on. Ares, I think, is a little bit underrated. I think if you know the matchup you're playing into and you can make really good use of your ult where you can force CC immunities out and like get easy ganks on them, so you have just something that really abuses the fact that they don't have a CC immunity. You can force it as the Soul Laner. Ever since the buff to his fire, he actually has decent clear in the early game, so it's not as bad as it used to be. And I actually think he's a little bit underrated there, and he can counter a lot of gods that really rely on like their escapes and their movement abilities to be useful, like Arthur, like Achilles, gods like that are pretty prevalent picks right now. So I think he's a little bit underrated there. I would put him in B+, and I think he's going to be just fine next season. Especially, you could do some weird strats with him with the Hog. I'm going to be talking about Hog a lot because I think it might shake up the Soul Lane a little bit. But you could do some weird strats with him with like Hog and starting their buff just because your clear is so good at level 1 with the fire. Ardio is one of those underrated gods where I just think she's such a boring god that you never see me play her. But she's honestly pretty good. She's like one of the only guardians that can get a lot of pressure, that can out-trade a lot of warriors. Her and Jorm are kind of like the only two, basically, for the most part, that don't have to play back in the early game, that have really good clear. The problem always with Ardio is that her late game's pretty trash. She has no CC immunity, so she can get locked down really quickly. And going into season 7, I don't think much of that will change for her. She'll still be around here. You still probably won't see me play her. She's just not a fun god. And a lot of times, even in competitive, playing a fun god is important because I think it makes you play better, in my opinion. But yeah. Athena, I'm also going to throw in A. I think Athena's a bit underrated. Since the next season, season 7, is going to be pretty similar to this season. You might not see a ton of differences in the tier list or with gods, but I have changed my opinion on some things, and I do think a little things here and there have changed. So I think Athena is a bit underrated. A lot of times in this meta, you can get stuck in the soul lane for like 15 minutes and just like endlessly fight the soul lane or not really make an impact across the map. And Athena's really good for that because she can proxy and just instantly rotate, have a TP to get back to her wave, get back to her tower to defend, and just keep up and farm and just really make an impact. And her early game really isn't that bad for a Guardian. She doesn't have a lot of pressure. She doesn't have a lot of kill pressure, but she has a lot of clear pressure in the fact that she can group up the wave and clear really easily with her reach, her 1 and her 3, So I think she's a bit underrated. You could also see some weird starts with her and going hog and stuff. You could start your own blue, get a reach stack before you get out of base, start your blue, throw a reach through it, then get another reach after you 3, and then hog it, and it'll probably instantly kill it. So pretty interesting there. I'm going to throw Wilkes in here. She's been an oddball pick. I think she's really fun. She's really challenging, and I think Wilkes is probably one of the harder gods to play in the entire game. But I don't think any of the changes next season are going to make her more viable. She's still going to get bullied by a lot of the Glad Shield warriors and stuff like that. And her laning phase is pretty bad. But if you can get out of the laning phase, she's a little bit of a monster. If there wasn't such thing as a laning phase, I'd put her in like A because she can be really annoying, even with like a bruiser build. But just because her laning phase is so rough, I'm going to put her in B. Same thing with Bacchus. I'm going to put Bacchus in B+. I think he's a bit underrated as well. I think a lot of the Guardians are probably underrated, and you could probably see them be played more. And I think with the addition of Hog, you might see them be played a little bit more. The only problem is I don't think Hog works on the totem, so totem's still really important next season. It's going to be really important in season 7. So a lot of these Guardians have a hard time getting them because one, they don't have the physical auto attack prowess that obviously like every warrior and assassin has. So it's really hard for them to auto it down in time. And their clear is usually not amazing, so it's really hard for them to get pressure to even go there or even out-trade the enemy solo to go there. So totem's still going to be really important because they buffed it. It's now basically back to where it was in a decent spot after all the PTS patches, so it's still going to be really important. So some of these Guardians that can't really get it are going to have a hard time being good in solo. Baron's up next. Baron actually got a buff. I'm going to put Baron in B+. I think he's going to be better next season as well because of the fact that health pots don't stack. So now you can go a Chalice and a Baron's Brew and those stack, which is like just a slight thing, but it's a cool thing, cool interaction that you might see a little bit more. Also, the fact that he got a buff to his 1, so it's now 80 base damage, I think, or maybe they buffed it from 80 to 100 or 60 to 80. Either way, his 1 has better clear at level 1. The only problem with Baron going into season 7 is that you can no longer really buy Guardian's Blessing in solo. It's not really going to be viable. And that was one of his good items. It was one of his options, at least. Now you're going to have to go Warrior's Blessing, or maybe do some like weird item rush start, or you could even go Mage's Blessing, something like that. But I think he's a little bit underrated. One of the best counter matchups, I think, for Baron is Osiris. Osiris is a really hard high pressure solo lane pick, and what you can do with Baron is you can force his ult on cooldown because Osiris has to ult out of your ult every time to get out of being sucked into the tower. So you can always force his ult, even though it's a 75-second cooldown on Osiris ult, you rush cooldown on Baron, and it's actually pretty good. Also, you get a free root every time you play against Osiris with Baron because he has no way to instantly get out of it, right? Because he has no instant escape or immunity. You can almost always hit your root, always hit your 2, and always hit your 1. So I think it's a good matchup if you learn how to play it. So that's one matchup you could look to play it into, considering Osiris is a pretty prevalent pick. Baka, I don't really have to talk too much about. Just really isn't good with the tank build. If you're going to play him, you're going to probably be going full damage. So I think he's a little bit viable because he can probably hard carry in like ranked and casuals and stuff. But he's going to be lower just because he's not very good with the frontline build. Bastet, I'm actually going to throw in B+. I actually think that the changes to her also help her in solo because being able to spam a cat that can tank autos for you is really going to help in trades against warriors and stuff like that. So I think she's a little bit buffed there. She's still kind of going to be the same thing as she was before, where you kind of have to build full damage on her to be really relevant coming out of the solo lane. But I think she's going to be a little bit better with her changes. And the fact that you also get a buff to your damage through your ultimate, so you don't have to build full damage on her. You could probably go a bit bruiser and still be kind of useful. So I'll throw her in B+. Could throw Arachne in here. I kind of skipped over her. I don't know. I think Arachne's just a trash god. They need to re-kit her. I'll put her over here so that People really get the idea that just changed that god. um, Bologna, I'm going to throw an A. She's another god that I believe is a little bit underrated. And going into season 7, the fact that Berserkers is going to be a little bit more prevalent, considering Glad Shield got nerfed, and maybe the metas are going to change with the god matchups and stuff like that. I think she's going to be a little bit buffed in that sense. She could also go the CAD shield. It probably wouldn't be great on her, but just the base stats on it would be nice, and it could help her scored healing a little bit. And if you have another heal on your team, then it might be nice. Mystical Mail as well is getting buffed, so Mystical Mail, whenever that's buffed, it's always a buff to characters that don't really need CDR, and Bologna doesn't exactly need CDR. It's not like she's bad with it, but if you go like a Berserkers, Ninja Tab by Mystical build, it could be really good from ahead, so I think she's going to be buffed a little bit in that regard. Cabrakan, the thing is, he was going to be really bad considering the blue buff and totem nerfs. I mean, you go on Cabrakan too quickly in general, even with the blue buff, even with totems. And before, it was going to be really bad. I would have had him in like C or D because of that. But because they brought the totem back up, they buffed the blue buff again, and it's back to kind of where it was. I would say that Cabrakan's probably around B+. Some of the items he can make really good use with. The fact that Flat Pen is a little bit less likely to get, and Stone of Binding got nerfed as a nerf to him. So you probably won't see him too much in next season. Just like last season, he just loses a lot of matchups. A lot of these like bullies just completely destroy him. So in fact, I'll probably put him down around B. Kind of weird to say that he's probably in the same foot as Bakasura or Willix or Opwash, but he pretty much is. Now this is the big one, Camazotz. I'm going to throw Camazotz in S+. So Kama got a ton of buffs. He's one of the biggest lane bullies. Glad Shield is no longer as relevant as it was. I still think you're going to see it a lot. Like, people are going to pick it up still pretty consistently, but it's not going to be as good as it was. And you never even had to go Glad Shield on Camazotz. That's what's so crazy about him. He has 5 ways to sustain. He's a big lane bully. Some of his matchups that he was bad into are getting nerfed. Like Arthur. He was like a pick you could play into Arthur, but I think Arthur wins that. I've always said that. And Arthur's not going to be as good anymore with the Glad Shield nerfs. Achilles getting a bit of a nerf as well. A lot of gods that he had a rough time against, he barely had a rough time against, are getting changed as well. And the fact that he got so many buffs, Glad Shield isn't going to be as relevant. The fact that you can keep your stacks up and just sustain so much through the laning phase. And you can also, the fact that physical assassin items are so OP right now, like Heartseeker, if you could fit a Crusher and just a Heartseeker into your Bruiser build, so say you have like a Runic Shield, and whatever other items you want, right? And you somehow are able to fit a Heartseeker and Crusher, you're going to one-shot their carries late game. You're not going to fall off as much as you used to, just because of how good those items are. So you can still be relevant, where you used to be pretty irrelevant when it came to the late game as Kama, because you just fell off so hard. You didn't really do anything because you have no CC. Now you just build a little bit more damage and be a lane bully, and then also be a bully in the team fights. So Kama's probably going to be around S+ next season. He's also really good at getting totems, so that goes without saying. Cerberus, I think he's around A+, honestly. He's probably one of the better Guardians. He's another Guardian that probably can get a little bit of pressure, not so much as like RDO or Jorm, but he can definitely compete with a lot of the warriors and a lot of the gods that sustain a lot. Amma, Kama, Achilles, the 3 gods you see above him, he's good into because he gets a lot of their healing through his passive. He's another one of those gods that can really bully out characters that don't have CC immunity, or if you force their CC immunity, can like get kills off ganks and stuff like that. And yeah, his clear is really good, so he can actually contest totem a good bit because he can kind of one-shot it with his 2-1. The problem is his team fight is a little bit awkward. He's really easy to kill when it comes to a team fight, and just really clunky sometimes and easy to lock down. So that's the only downfall of Cerberus, in my opinion. Chalk coming up next. Chalk, I think, is one of those guys that's a little bit underrated just because he's so safe, but at the same time, he falls off really hard. I even tried to get a Chalk gameplay the other day on PTS with Transcendence, Boots, and CAD Shield. I like it. It was fun, but the problem is I went over a team fight and I wasn't able to kill anyone. I wasn't really that relevant in my CC because the only real CC Chalk has when it comes to team fights is his 3-second silence, which is good, but he has no CC on his low cooldown abilities in his 1 through 3. So he kind of just falls off when it comes to that. I think you could pick him into some matchups like Arthur, Achilles, and just like stalemate the lane really hard. But the problem with that is, what are you stalemating for? Unless the rest of your team is super good late game and you kind of just want to stalemate this Arthur, Achilles to not be like a monster in the mid game, like you're going into a team fight as Chalk. Do you really want to do that? So not really. So I would say he probably not even A. He's probably around B+. I put him a little bit lower just because of how much he kind of falls off. Chang'e, she's one of those gods that I think you can play her the past like 3 seasons. You could have seen her a lot at Worlds even, I think, if it was a person like really comfortable on her. or just really enjoyed playing her, or really relied on the healing for like their team comps or something. I think she's around A. The fact that Totem and Blue Buff are basically back to what they were is good for her. She no longer has to worry about like running She's one of those gods that you can not go TP on, which is really cool. You can develop some weird strats where you go like meditation and like spam heals for your jungler whenever you 2v2 and stuff like that. So I'd say that she's a little bit underrated in the grand scheme of things, but I think you've probably seen her played a decent amount for the past few seasons regardless. So moving on, Kukulkan. So Kukulkan, I think if the Totem and Blue Buff, the changes to Totem and Blue Buff didn't end up being reverted, you would have seen him S+, probably maybe even SS. I know that's crazy, but somewhere around there, he would have been the top pick by far, just dominating the solo lane because he doesn't have to worry about mana whatsoever, and it was a big issue during the PTS. But considering they reverted it, I've already said this a million times, but considering they reverted it, I think that he's probably still going to be pretty good. I think he's going to be around S just because some of the warriors that he's had rough matchups into are getting nerfed. And I think he was a bit unrated at the end of last season anyway. So I'm actually going to put Kukulkan in S. And yeah, I just think that that's where he deserves to go. Enough said. Moving on to Erlang. I'm going to throw Erlang in here. You haven't seen him been played in solo in like a few seasons. Because I think he's just trash there now. I mean, they've completely nerfed him because of how good he is in jungle. He never was really good in solo during the time he was good in jungle. He was just better in jungle anyway, so you wouldn't want to play him in solo. And because of that, he's gotten kind of nerfed into the ground. And I would say that he's probably one of the worst warriors. Maybe the worst warrior in solo. Up there with like Nike and Guan and stuff. I put him in B, honestly. I don't see a reason to play him. Too easy to kill, no CC immunity. Doesn't really have a good upside because he can't really bully people anymore because no Fatalis. Kind of just lost all of his goodies. I'm going to throw Fafnir in here. I think Faf is a little bit underrated, honestly, when it comes to solo lane. He's such a monster when it comes to team fights. You just have to get out of that laning phase. The problem is right now there's a lot of bullies in solo lane, so it makes it really hard for you to get out of that laning phase without being really far behind and costing your team the game. But if you can, and if you develop a way to do that, like going Mage's Blessing and it proccing on your 2 and making sure that you're playing perfectly and efficiently, getting your blue buffs, maybe you have to even go a hog in the early game to try and get those. You could get out of the laning phase and be really strong, but I actually think he's underrated. And probably, honestly, above even Erlang. So, Fenrir, I honestly am a big fan of Fenrir. I've always thought he's one of the better assassin solos. He doesn't really have any bad matchups. Like the reason he doesn't have any bad matchups is because even in the matchups where he gets out pressured, he has a lot of pressure in the fact that he can ult the enemy solo into his tower. Now they can always go bees, but then they won't have TP and they won't be as much of a bully as they're supposed to. So he always has that answer to those pressure gods, which I really like, and I've always considered to be really useful when it comes to him in the solo lane. And I think he's going to be around A+. Next season, the thing is, he can be built a lot of different ways. He never was really good with Glad Shield, so that's a good buff to him. He can go rush into Breastplate. He could even go Berserker's Ninja Tabi and be more auto attack focused for the early game and sustain a lot through that in his 2. So he has a lot of options, and I think next season that's only going to get better with the fact that Glad Shield isn't as good. On to Geb. Throw Geb up here. Geb's probably a little bit lower on the totem pool, if you will. Probably B or B+, maybe in between. If I could put him in between here, I would. Can I? Oh, I can. Do I ever do it right here? Do it right here. Nope, that didn't work. All right, there we go. We're going to put Geb like in between. The reason I think he might be a little bit better next season is that he could go hog to maybe secure his own blue or steal a blue or something like that. Obviously, you can't steal their blue with hog, but if you start their blue and somehow are able to get it, then go to your blue and then secure it with hog. It'd be some weird strat. I've tried that on a few gods, but I think that might be a little bit buff to him. The problem is he's really bad at getting totems, so he's not really relevant for that reason. And he's also bullied out by all these characters up here. They can solo kill him really easily, keep him under his tower. Guardian's Blessing isn't as good anymore. The thing is, your clear is decent on Geb, so you don't exactly need Guardian's Blessing, but since Guardian's Blessing is kind of completely irrelevant in solo lane now, it's a big nerf to him, so not going to see too much of a resurgence of Geb, that's for sure. Hades. This is going to be a controversial place for me to put him. Everyone's like, oh, he's going to put him S+. Oh, he's going to put him S. He's going to put him A+. No. Hades is still going to be absolute dog shit. nothing's changed. He's still going to be a bit of a lane bully, and the fact that he just out clears everyone is really annoying. But the payoff for it is he's probably one of the gods with the most early game payoff with the biggest drop off. What I mean by that is he'll dominate in lane and out clear, get a tower by 6 minutes, and then he'll rotate over to team fight with maybe like a 1 or 2 level lead, 3 level lead at the most, in the most drastic, and not really do much with it unless he's playing into 5 gods that he just absolutely destroys. He has a useless 3 when it comes to team fighting. His 3 is basically useless. His 2 is a good ability. His 1 is a bad ability, and his ult is a good ability. So he's basically a character with 2 good abilities. Now, if you look at the gods up here, especially like if you look at like Arthur, Yamoja, Kakolin, those gods maybe even have 5 or 6 abilities that are good and are useful in team fights. So it's just kind of like, it's just troll. His ult is good though. If you're able to make really good use out of his ult, then I would put him in like, maybe if he was into 5 characters that he like Force or Act is on, maybe I put him in A or B plus. So he's a bit of a counter matchup when it comes to that. So because of that, I'll put him in B plus, and you know that this is what that's about. If you're able to counter pick and ranked and get a nice matchup for it, then I would put him in B plus. But for the most part, he's probably around B. Might be a little bit surprising. I know people wanted him. Guan's just one of those warriors that just, I'd say that if you're really comfortable on Guan, you could probably put him in A, and like you just know every single matchup on him, and your team knows how to play around him and play back a little bit for your heals and play around healing. But the problem is most people in Smite don't know how to play around healing, for one. And for 2, he just has a lot of tough matchups. He'll get bullied in every single one of these matchups above him. Pretty much all these matchups he's going to get bullied in, especially these top 6. He'll get absolutely bullied in these. And because of that, there's no real reason to pick him. You would think maybe because of CAD Shield, he's a little bit better, and it'll make his healing a little bit better in team fights. But honestly, you're not going to get to that point if you're playing against any decent player playing all of these picks up here. Even some of these picks, he's going to get bodied by. He's going to get bodied by Chang'e. He's going to get bodied by Ardio, and yeah, he just gets bullied way too hard. If you could teleport to a team fight phase, there's no such thing as a laning phase or getting bullied or getting out pressured, then I would probably put him in A, but because of that, he's pretty far down there, even below these gods. Honestly, I think these gods are underrated, and that's why I put them. They're a little bit spicy. B plus is my spicy picks that I think are underrated. B is like, okay, these gods are just bad, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm gonna skip Ganesha just because I don't think that's just kind of troll. Herc's interesting. So Herc, at the end of last season, I was considering picking him. I thought he was a good pick. He's actually good into a lot of these pressure picks. Everything, I would say he's probably not too great into Amma or Kama, but he's good into Achilles. He's fine into Kakolin. He's good into Arthur, especially if you know how to play those matchups. Like, they're actually decent matchups for Herc, so that's why I would say he's A, because he can stalemate against those bullies, and he also has a payoff when it comes to team fights. He has so much CC and so much pick potential in team fights that I'd say his payoff is actually there for getting out of the laning phase and stalemating. So I'm going to put Herc in A. Horus is just like a spicy pick that I like to play. I'm going to put him in B. He's not very good. If you're able to get out of the laning phase with him, then I think he is pretty decent. Actually, I'd say he's probably even C, because I would say he's probably worse than Guan. He gets bullied even harder, and his payoff maybe isn't as good in team fights. But he is really fun, and I really like playing him, especially with like Golden Blade and stuff. Yeah, some people were subbed. I need to catch up to that. Yo, Danny, thanks for the Twitch Prime sub. Mikey Mullins with the Twitch Prime for 15 months. Mike with the Tier 1 for 13 months. It's happy anniversary, Smooch, with emphatic moi at the end. And Nibble with the $5 says, hello, YouTube. Don't you listen to this man? Loki is SS. Everyone else is D tier. I wouldn't know because I'm a Smite Gaming powerhouse and I may not be bronze. Thanks for the $5, Nibble. I appreciate it. And that troll message. Thanks for the resubs, guys, and that new sub from Danny. Appreciate it. I love you all. Okay, moving on. Keep saying moving on. Shut it. A couple of these guys I could probably throw in here, but there's no real point. I don't think much is going to change when it comes to Season 7. So Jorm. Jorm's another god that's probably around S+. I would probably say S+. He's even going to be better next season because of Odin's going to be a relevant pick. He counters Odin's ult, which is kind of cool. Some of the magical items are going to be better on him. Even like the Tyrannical Plane Home. I don't think it's going to be amazing. I think they kind of nerfed it to a good spot, but you could still see it on him. He was one of the best picks towards the end of last season. I didn't really like him that much, and I had certain matchups where I think I could have, at least in a competitive setting, really bully him and pressure him out. and abuse him. But when it comes to ranked and most of competitive and most of casuals and everything like that, he's still going to be one of the top picks. Warrior's Blessing is still amazing. So obviously he's good with it. Warrior's Blessing is pretty good against him, but it doesn't matter. I mean, he just has so much pressure. He's one of the few Guardians with a ton of pressure and basically plays like a warrior. And even though Flat Pen got nerfed a little bit when it comes to magicals, he still can access it through like he could still go binding, and you could even still go like divine on him and really just do a lot of damage. He just does way too much damage. His ult's still going to be good, and he's still really good at getting totems, which is going to be really, really relevant next season. So I don't see Heimdall isn't on here, so he's not viable in solo. So I'm not even going to put him. Arthur, I'm thinking dropped off a good bit. Obviously, Glad Shield's still going to be bought. I've already said that. It's still going to be pretty good as well. And Arthur is still going to use it in team fights pretty well, especially if they don't have anti-heal. He's still going to heal a lot from it. And he's also still going to be a bully when it comes to laning phase. He's going to pressure out people with his 18 ults that he gets in 10 seconds and the 45 abilities he has. But the thing is, you started to see him drop off a bit towards the end of last season because people really learned how to deal with him. His drop off when it comes to late game is really massive. He can be easily shut down and CC'd and just insta-kill when it comes to that. However, he can still win a game on his own, especially if the enemy team doesn't build anti-heal. And he can still completely bully out people in the laning phase. He doesn't really have any bad matchups besides maybe now, I would say, probably Jorm and Kama. And Amma, I would say those three gods are pretty good against him. Arthur will still probably beat up these gods. Collin's decent against him, but either way, he's still going to be a really just safe laning phase god that can kind of bully out whoever he wants. So, moving on, Khepri, Kukulkan, Kumba. Kumba I could put. I guess I will. Kumba I'd probably have down here. He's another one of those gods that doesn't have pressure, and if you survive, the payoff isn't really amazing. If you have some like weird combo that you're running where you have like a mage in mid where if you go full CDR and they go full CDR, you can constantly ult people and get picks with him through like the big mage ult and follow up. But other than that, the payoff really isn't there. Kuzenbo, honestly, Kuzenbo is pretty underrated. I think he's another one of those picks that kind of plays like a warrior. He doesn't have a lot of pressure in the early game, but he does have kill pressure in the sense that he can push people through the wave and everything. He's not very good at getting totem. That's one of the main problems with Kuzenbo, the turtle boy, right now, is that his Nene doesn't actually target the totem because it's a pet, and none of the pets target it because it's neutral. So that's a little bit rough. And his dash is just absolutely trash for doing damage to the totem because it only does one instance of damage. It's just not that great, and then he has to auto attack it down with his guardian auto attack. So that's part of the reason he's not very good right now. I think if totem wasn't as prevalent, you'd actually probably see Kuzenbo around A+S just because he's one of the best like tanks in the game. He is so good at just surviving, and you can't really say that for a lot of gods right now in Smite just because of the excess of percent pen and all that. So I would say that Kuzenbo is around A. You might see some weird strats with him as well. I was talking about the hog and like getting 2 blues or getting a certain buff and then going hogging your own buff. Kuzenbo's really good at that because of his triple bounce in the early game, level 1. A lot of gods, probably not viable in here. Loki, let's throw Loki in D. You see people play it on in ranked and solo, so I might as well throw it in here. Loki, honestly, if you're a good Loki player, you can win a lot of ranked games with him. But I'm going to put him in D because I think they should change his kit, and I actually don't think he's good. And if you're playing Loki and you ever play against a player that knows at least a little bit of what they're doing, you're going to get bullied out really hard, and it should cost you your team the game. Honestly, every time you pick Loki, it should cost your team the game. As long as you're playing against somebody that is equal skill level as you. Neja's going to be a little bit surprising for you guys. Neja, honestly, is one of my top picks going into Worlds. I didn't really get to pick it. It's a really good god, I think, in solo. Ton of sustain. Has a lot of good matchups, even into the bullies. Can go into a team fight and be really, really annoying. Another god that's actually really hard to kill just because he's so slippery and he has a lot of options as far as like sashing that lasts 1 second. The cool part about Neja in any role, or at least in solo for us, is that his sash doesn't DR, so it's always 1 second. So you can make some pretty nasty CC chains with him. And I think he's a bit underrated in solo when it comes to other players. For me, I've always thought he's A+ for a good few years now. So I'd say he's around there. Nike, throw Nike in like C, maybe B. Probably put her in B, actually. I think there's a bit of an upside to her in the sense they did just buff her Ren, so it's going to be doing a decent amount more damage going into season 7. However, her passive is absolutely useless. She's like one of the gods that it's weird because the numbers on her passive are just so small. I think they should just give her a different passive. I think they said that the community likes the way her passive works and it's a cool passive for Nike. But honestly, is it cool anymore with how useless it is? Let's try and change the perception on that for the community. Nike passive is useless. Her 2 is kind of a useless ability. Her jump isn't exactly useless, but I mean, just like not as reliable. And her ult is good for living, and that's about it. It's good for surviving. That's about it. Just no real relevant CC for a late game god, and then she gets bullied in the laning phase, so the payoff isn't amazing for her when it gets to the team fights. So that's why she's not very good, and a useless passive. Okay. Odin. So Odin's new. I almost want to put Odin in new just because of how much his kit has changed. But I'm going to go out on a limb and actually say that Odin isn't going to be the best god in solo. Everyone's like maybe overreacting a little bit, but I think he's going to be around A+ to A. Now, I think his 3 is really good. His bird bomb is the same, so take what you will about that from what you knew before. But the fact that he has 4 damaging abilities now is really good for solo lane. That means he can actually kill people when he dives them. The only issue is I think his ult's a little bit worse now because you can actually destroy it, and a lot of characters in the game can quickly destroy it. It does do damage, which is nice. But I think because he has 4 damaging abilities and some decent scaling, you might see him a little bit more in the jungle, and he can be a little bit more useful there because he can ult people in the early game and force phantoms if they have to buy it, or force out kills if they have no way to get out. So he's a little bit better as a roaming god, I would say. So that's why he isn't as good in the solo lane. But I still think he's a decent frontline, and you'll still see him. The problem is I actually do think he'll probably get bullied out by these characters, though. He has no way to sustain. And you can go Glad Shield on him. He has 4 damaging abilities for it, but it's just not what it's going to be. It's not what it's not going to be what it used to be, is what I'm trying to say. Glad Shield, that is. So Osiris, another amazing pick, I think. You can't go wrong with picking him. The only thing you can go wrong with is if you go to a super late game and you aren't very comfortable on him. He doesn't really do a whole lot besides be really tanky. But I think he can single-handedly win his team the game just by bullying people out and having a ton of pressure and rotating in the mid-game. He is a mid-game monster. Make sure that if you know how to play him, you're playing him for the mid-game. And if you're playing him for the mid-game and you go to a team fight and are ahead because you have so much pressure in the laning phase and you can get totems whenever you want, you actually use that mid-game pressure to win the game. If you get towards the late stages of the game, like game 3? Game 3 of... Game 3? Yeah, Game 3 of Worlds, where I was playing Osiris. We got to a really late game, and I kind of fell off and wasn't able to do a whole lot, unfortunately. But that's kind of the only drop-off of him. Everything else is amazing about him. Bullying the laning phase, bullying the mid-game, gets every totem, can get enemy blue buffs, get his own blue buff, do whatever he wants. Yeah. Osiris S for sure. Moving on. Pele. I'll throw Pele around B. Another one of those gods I think maybe a little underrated. Can get bullied by these bullies up here. That's the only reason she's down here. Her payoff isn't amazing in team fights because she doesn't have a lot of CC. But if you build her in a bruiser fashion, or maybe even build a little bit more damage on her with like Heartseeker and stuff like that, her ult is amazing in team fights, and it's really good at diving. She gets countered by anti-heal, so if you go like a Soul Eater build on her and then they go like one anti-heal item, it's like, okay, well, now my build's useless, so... But Soul Eater did get buffed, so you might see her a little bit more because of that. But yeah, anti-heal just really good against her, and then she can get shut down because of it. Relies too much on the healing. I'm going Rat. Rat's a little bit weird. So Rat, I think he's another one of those gods that can win his team the game, even in jungle, because you can Acorn Rush and get early kills and really like snowball and get jungle camps off of that and stuff. And I think even with Hog, especially with Hog, but even before, doing weird starts with him would have been really useful even at the end of last season, going into this season. Doing some weird starts with all the buffs on the map and the way things are spawning. You can rush an Acorn and start somewhere on the map and TP over to your wave and have a full Acorn and pressure and just do a bunch of weird stuff, just like kind of theory craft and mess around with Rat. And I think it can win you a lot of games. The only thing is that his late game as a tank isn't amazing. Really do a whole lot. CC isn't as amazing as in the early game. But you know, he's still annoying. And if you build a Bit Bruiser on him because he can access um, those assassin items so well because of his scaling, that I think he won't fall off as much as people think. So Robin. Robin, I'd actually probably say is better than these gods down here. Probably not better than these gods, so I'll put him in B plus, probably around here. He's another one of those gods that if you build a bruiser on him and get those Heartseeker items and maybe even like an Erendite or something like that, you're going to be really annoying for their carries to deal with, because if you have tank items plus those items and you have those 2 forms of immunity and a blink, you're going to be able to dive them really hard. And he also can survive these laning phases pretty easily. The problem is he doesn't have a lot of CC, and if you're playing against certain carries that it's really hard for you to like follow them or chase them or actually get secured kills on them, then you're going to be really useless. Like, you have to get kills on Robin when it comes to team fights. Like, that's your entire job, because you're basically just only diving them and doing damage, right? That's your entire job, and if you're not able to perform that, you're going to be absolutely useless because you have no CC. Set. I'm going to throw Set probably, I would say he's in between, if I can get him there. I don't know if it's going to work. Not working. Oh, there we go. I'm going to put Set in between A plus and S. I don't think he's quite in line with these gods, but I do think he's better than these gods down here. And I do think he's going to be a little bit better next season because of the Glad Shield nerfs. He doesn't really need Glad Shield. He doesn't rely on it like these other characters do. He can actually build into some other stuff a little bit easier. The only issue I think with him is that Set doesn't really want Breastplate. He wants something with damage. Void Shield got nerfed, so it's going to be a little bit awkward to build into first item. You could still go Glad Shield on him. You could still go something like Blackthorn on him, which will give you CDR and stuff. But the problem is you want power on him so that you can be more bruiser and actually one-shot carries when it comes to team fight while being like really tanky. And because of that, he's just a little bit awkward because his build path may be a little bit worse next season. He's not going to make amazing use of it. But I still think you probably just go Void Shield on him and be in a good spot. I think his drop off towards the end of last season was a little bit weird. I don't think it was warranted. He's still really good at getting totems. He is still really good at diving backlines. He's one of the best in the game at that. And he's still really obnoxious and really safe in the laning phase just because of his long range escape. So he can also go the CAD Shield. That's true. He can go the CAD Shield and get increased healing through, considering it's a ability healing. Sobek. So Sobek was not seen at all last season just because he lacks any pressure whatsoever. He can't get any totems. All that nonsense. And because of that, I don't think he's going to be a lot better this season, but I do think you might see some weird strats with him with Hog and getting blue buffs, just because he even has trouble getting his own blue buff. So now that he can maybe secure his own blue buff, I think you might see him a little bit more. He's still not going to be able to get totems unless he like ults the totem or something crazy like that. But I do think you'll see him a little bit more, probably a little bit underrated when it comes to the end of last season and going into season 7. But yeah, he's still going to suffer from the same things. And also Guardian's Blessing is nerfed, so that's pretty rough for Sobek because his early clear is so bad. But it's not the end of the world. And honestly, you can start ulting waves once you hit level 5 and you'll be fine. You'll be getting all the last hits and getting your gold back up. Wukong. Oh, I guess I shouldn't gloss over Serket. Serket is terrible now. Guardian's Blessing. You need Guardian's Blessing on Serket. You cannot clear the wave without. You can't clear the wave, and you need Guardian's Blessing to stay in line. She also got nerfed a ton. She's no longer really good as a tank. You kind of need power to actually scale, and she's just not as annoying as she was before. She still has a lot of CC, and her ult's still really, really nice, but I just don't see it being viable. I don't see it being viable, so rip my Serket solo. Wukong. I think Wukong's actually going to be S. I hate how it does that because I have it down there. It's fine, though. Wukong's, I think, going to be S. He's going to be really good next season. He's seen a lot of small buffs just for like the past year because he hasn't been played a lot, and because of that, it's all added up, and he's in a really good spot right now. He's really safe. Can do well against these bully characters, especially if you play him how you're supposed to play him. You know the matchups. And he is really good when it comes to team fights. He can even go a bruiser build with like a Heartseeker, getting like a Jotuns and full CDR, and just be really annoying. Constantly having your ult up, constantly having your Tiger up when you need to use it. And he's actually pretty good when it comes to team fighting. He can get a little bit bullied by probably, I would say, these 3 characters, and maybe some of these characters can bully him, but he can also stalemate that in a good way. He can kind of do what Vamana does in the sense that he just ignores them. Maybe he can't out pressure them, but he can stalemate it in the sense that he just like runs away from them, clears stuff really fast, and gets out of the laning phase probably not behind, maybe even ahead if you're able to start proxying and be. I'd say Wukong's going to get even better next season. The only thing probably should mention is changes to Glad Shield. The thing about Wukong is he was never a god that abused Glad Shield really hard by hitting multiple people. He definitely can with that, like with his 2, he can hit multiple people when he's in a circle with them or in an area with them. But it's really about his spammable abilities, just throwing out his 1 from long range and constantly proccing that, and kind of like Osiris. Osiris is still going to be really good with Glad Shield because he's just spamming his 1 and hitting a single person with it, which is giving him a ton of Glad Shield heals. So, okay. I guess I'll throw Terra in here. Probably underrated, probably in line with these gods, I'd say, just a bit worse than these gods. Maybe up here, maybe. Actually, we'll throw her an A. Another problem with Terra is that she doesn't get totem amazingly, just like any other Guardian, which is definitely rough for her, and it's going to be bad in the next season. However, she's probably not the worst Guardian at getting totem, just because she can throw out her 3 or her 2 and get the extra auto attack damage on it. And she also has a decent amount of burst for it. Guardian's Blessing is kind of a must on her. That's the only issue, and that's not going to be relevant at all in Soul Lane in Season 7, so that kind of makes her fall off. But I wouldn't say that, even though it's a must on her, you could probably try some different builds where you get a little bit of power and it helps you clear a little bit earlier. And your clear isn't really that bad once you hit level 3. Level 1 to 2, it's awful. It's like the worst. You're going to lose minions no matter what. But once you get to like level 3, 4, 5, it starts picking up. So you could get away with not going it. So not the end of the world. Thanatos. Thanatos I actually think is underrated as well. And I'm going to put him in A+, considering that sustain I think is going to be really important in Soul Lane in Season 7, just like every other season. But also because he just has sustain throughout his kit. He has a lot of ways to get early picks through like boots rushing and being really annoying, like invading and stuff, because his early game, once you have full boots, like the jungler doesn't want to mess with you because you can just one-shot him. And you can do a lot of things with that and play it a lot of different styles. And yeah, I'd say that he's probably underrated when it comes to that. One of the few gods in the game that I think can, at least in Soul Lane, still like solo kill people really easily. So I guess I should throw Susano in here. Let's throw Susano in B+. The weird part about Susano is that if you can get like a bruiser build on him and come out of the Soul Lane with like 3 or 4 levels ahead of like their mage, I'm not exactly how sure how it will work next season as far as like levels and stuff and XP, but if you're able to get out of that and be ahead with a bruiser build on Susano, it's really, really annoying for them to deal with, because it's basically like any other Susano diving them, except they actually can't turn on him and kill him with like 2 people because you're just so slippery and you have tank items. So if you're able to get like a Transcendence in your build while having like tank items, and then maybe later on have like a full damage item like a Heartseeker while having like a Runic Shield and stuff, he's really annoying. And if you're really comfortable on Susano, especially a Susano solo, I'd say he's probably around B+. Thor. I'm gonna throw Thor in A+. Just for like the general population, I'd say he's probably around there, maybe A. They nerfed his ults, now it's 110 seconds, I think, 110, to be in line with other global ultimates or semi-global ultimates. That's definitely a nerf to him in solo, no doubt, because it's just going to lower the amount of times he can make rotations to mid, which is a really big deal for him in solo. And it's also going to lower the amount of times he can proxy and just ult away and get away for free. So the timer on that's going to be even longer, so that's a little bit rough. But he's still really good at just avoiding enemy solo and being a monster in the mid game. His clear is still really good. He can also out pressure a lot of these gods. Like he can bully them decently hard if you auto attack cancel perfectly and abuse your early game power and stuff like that. But the problem with him is that you kind of have to play it to avoid the enemy solo. And if you know how to play it, it can be good, but a lot of times it's kind of hard to do that against a lot of these lane bullies. So Thor, obviously 2 stuns, amazing. Ultimate's still really, really good. Morgan I'm throwing here. I really like Morgan. I think she's probably underrated. I'm going to put her in A. She can do a lot of different things in her build path. She can go full damage when it comes out of the solo lane and just try and be useful in that way by turning into tanks if she needs to, or just doing whatever she needs to. She can build bruiser. She can build full tank with like a Lonos and just be a transformation bot late game, especially if it's like you're picking it for a certain pick to completely counter them. Like I think a lot of times you saw Morgan get picked against Isis, which I thought was really smart, because basically you you have a Morgan who's really good, like what level her abilities 1 through 3 are pretty good abilities throughout the game, and then you have an Isis ult late game for securing objectives and making sure that you can combat the enemy Isis ult with your own. So in that sense, I think she's pretty good in solo lane, and she's a bit more of a counter pick, and you have to be really comfortable on her because she does have the downfalls of any other mage in the sense that she can get killed really easily when she's dove, even with tank items. But she's one of those mages that can bully out warriors in the early game because of her auto attack pressure and her low cooldowns on her too. Tier. I hate tier. Objectively, I'll put tier in B plus, maybe B, or maybe A, probably A. But I don't really like tier. He's just a really safe god. You can't really punish him in the laning phase. He can be useful in the team fights if you can hit really nice blink fearlesses on their backline and be really annoying and just be really hard to deal with because you just can't die. But you're also not amazing at being relevant in the team fights by killing them or being like really annoying. If they just ignore you, that's the problem with tiers. If the enemies just ignore you and like are able to like maybe position correctly and get around you, not have to worry about you too much, then you're not going to be too useful in the team fights. But you're still not going to be very easy to kill. And you can still be annoying in the sense that you're just another target that they have to get out of the way from. So I'd say that tier's probably around A. Another good thing about tier is that he can kind of survive all these matchups up here. But again, it's like one of those gods where what's the payoff for surviving the matchup? Why not just pick a better god that can maybe fight back and also be relevant in team fights, you know? Vamana. Think of it, Vamana is if this was just a tier list for me, I'd put Vamana S, maybe even like S plus. I think Vamana is really good, and I love playing him, and I think he's one of the gods that can kind of do everything and not really get bullied and be really useful. But because this is a general tier list, I would probably say he's probably A plus, maybe in between. I can do that again. I can't. How many times have I done this? I'd say he's probably like in between S and A plus. I think he's a really good god, pretty underrated. Even though anti-heal is really good against his ult, he gets a shield from it now ever since they made that change. It's been pretty nice for him. And also, he doesn't get countered by like Odin Cage, which you're going to see a lot of Odin next season probably, because he can just walk right through it. He can walk right through Odin, or Thor wall, Ymir wall, all that stuff now with his ult, which is really nice. And he's one of those gods like Wukong that can survive all these bad matchups by just really being annoying and just avoiding them by dashing out of the lane when he can, clearing the wave, instant clearing the wave with his two abilities that are really good for wave clear, and just getting out of the lane and going for jungle buffs and being really annoying in the sense that he can steal camps and get ahead. He can even get ahead of a lot of these matchups. Like last at Worlds, you saw me play Vamana against Variety, and he was playing Arthur, and that's a bad matchup for Vamana. But the thing was, I survived the early game just enough where I actually ended up getting ahead because I can just run around the map and farm so much quicker than all these gods that the payoff is actually worth it. The payoff to survive that is actually really, really good. He can also build like a lot of different ways. So Xing 10. Honestly, Xing 10, I'm probably one of the more underrated Guardians. I think he was viable at the end of last season, and he's going to get better next season with the addition of Hog. Not the greatest at getting totems, but he's another guy that can abuse characters without CC immunity or force their ults and get easy picks because of that. So he's probably pretty underrated for that reason. And with the item changes next season, maybe it's a bit of a nerf to him, but he really was never so useful in the sense that he can just one-shot people. He was just really useful because he has so much CC and he's so hard to deal with and so hard to actually lock down and kill. Emoja, one of the new gods. I think Emoja is probably going to be around S in solo. I think support, she's probably a little bit better. That's the only reason she's S+, because if you're going to pick Emoja, you might as well put it in support. But just because she's like can be that flex pick and is really good, I'm going to put her in S. She is so obnoxious. She does way too much healing. You can lock down way too hard with her one. And you just click those abilities. You click 4, this is how you play her. You click 4, and depending on the situation, if you need to heal your teammates, keep them alive, you just spam click 2 on them. If you want to be really aggressive and go on people, then you just spam click 1 on them. You play her. It's really simple and really OP because she gets way too many of those abilities off. Ymir, throw down in B+. Just so easy to kill. That's the problem with Ymir. 2 of his abilities root him, so he's just super easy to lock down and hit with, like, when he's static with some pretty harder to hit ultimates or abilities. They can just hit him from range. Honestly, I think if this one changed, if they made it so you could walk and freeze on Ymir, he would go from B+ to like A+, no doubt. if you could walk and freeze, it wouldn't stop when you kind of like Athena taunt. Because with Athena, you can continue walking, taunt somebody, and keep walking, right? If they made that change to Ymir freeze, I actually probably think he would go from B+ to A+. Just that one small change, but because he's just so slow and so easy to lock down, not like slow in the sense that his movement speed is slow, but slow in the sense that two of his abilities make him stop moving, like his ultimate and his 3. And sometimes when you wall yourself, you make yourself stop moving. But yeah, just way too easy to kill. But he has a lot of CC, and he can be a bit of a lane bully. I'd say that every matchup he can be a lane bully into, just because his 2 and his passive make him do a lot of damage in the early game. And then looks like last but not least, we have Zhang Kui. Zhang Kui, one of the better mages for a while now in solo. I want to see how good the new Spear of the Magus is on Zhang. That's interesting. Maybe if it's really good on him, then you might see him a little bit better. But I think he's probably around A+A. He fell off a little bit because they nerfed him and they nerfed his passive, and basically because of that reason, he fell off. It was a pretty big nerf. But he's still one of the mages with the highest payoffs when it comes to solo, because he can bully out people. He can survive against bullies. He has a lot of sustain, and he's good against Storm. Can force Storm ult really easily and be really big bully to him. So that's nice. So that's why I put him up here, because these high value picks, if you have any good matchups into them, that character gets a lot better, because then it could be picked a lot higher when these characters are in the game, So when it comes to team fights, he can literally one-shot and destroy the enemy backline. So, oh hell, I almost forgot about Hell. Good question. Well, I think some of the CDR items are actually going to be better next season, like Chronos Pen and stuff. So that's a small buff to Hell. But the issue with Hell is that she is really easy to kill and can get bullied really hard. Like, it's a lot of these gods that can get bullied can still survive pretty well. Where did she go? She disappear? Oh, she's right here. Oh, it's because I didn't do it in alphabetical order. A lot of these gods that get bullied can still survive and have a decent payoff. But with Hell, like, it's a struggle to even just like live against a lot of these characters. And actually, the problem with a lot of those characters as well is you can maybe survive depending on like the player against or the matchup or whatever happens throughout the game. Maybe you get a first blood. The issue with these characters is that they can't proxy. They can't walk into the enemy jungle and not be punished. They can't rotate over freely and not have to worry about somebody sitting in the jungle and going on them. They have to have somebody escort them. They have to have a 2v2. They have to be playing with somebody else on the team. They can't do things on their own. And solo lane is all about doing things on your own. So they struggle with that. And she's a good example of that. A lot of these other characters down here are good examples of that. Chang'e isn't as much, just because you can build full tank on her and still be kind of useful. And you can stalemate really hard in lane. But, usually the characters that like that struggle because they kind of have to be escorted around the map. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that's most of the viable solo lane gods. Maybe I missed a couple, but I would say that's pretty much it. So this is my tier list for solo lane going into season 7. This is what I think you should be playing or should be counter picking with, and try to explain as much as I can. Again, a lot of the season 7 changes for solo lane. Wait, let me rephrase that. There aren't a lot of season 7 changes for solo lane, so there's not going to be a big difference in the meta, I think. And I think you're still going to see pretty much the same thing you saw, at least at the beginning or middle of last season. Some things might develop and change, but I would say your 5 gods that you want to be playing going into season 7 in solo that you need to know how to play are Amma, Kama, Jorm, Kukulkan, or Osiris, Kukulkan, and Achilles. Wait, let me throw Kukulkan in there as well. Okay, I just messed up my tier list, whatever. That's not 5 gods, I can't count. That's 6. Okay, these are your 6 gods. You should 100% know how to play going into season 7. I could throw like Wukong and Yamoja in there, but I would say that like even these 2 picks you could go wrong with picking, because if you're playing in a few of these matchups, they actually might bully you out. So I would say these 6 picks will make it so that not only will you bully people, you won't be bullied yourself, and they're probably going to be the strongest picks going into season 7. So what did I have? I had Achilles and Cullen here, Cyrus here. Yeah, this is it. Okay. Yeah, this is my season 7 tier list for Soul Lane. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. Try out these picks. If you disagree with me, let me know. If you agree with me, let me know. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.